What makes you stressed? What makes you moved? And what brings you to a state of gratitude?
From where I am in my life right now, to talk about what really gets me stressed, because I don't have a lot of stressors anymore. I'm grateful for living in the time that we live, because for medical science, for instance, is that I wouldn't be alive for a couple of reasons if it weren't for the kinds of things we have now. I had pneumonia as a child, I had, measles and mumps and all those sorts of things, that they were able to treat them in ways that they can't now. And they couldn't then. And so I'm grateful for that always. I'm grateful for all the people I know and people I care about. I never want to be a leader or follower. And then I bet the followers that, people find truth in all these different places, and they are able to write it down and pass it on. And that's wonderful. And yet I always skeptical about other people's truths, because I always would measure it up against mine.
All right, here we are, about to talk fatherhood, episode 500. Excited to talk with you after all these years of having fatherhood interviews. Now I get to have one with my dad.
Yeah, well, it's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, first question out the gate is, how old do you find yourself today?
How old am I? Well, I'm not sure if I found myself today, really. But, I'm feeling pretty spry.
And I can already tell from the beginning that we're going to have a good conversation about fatherhood. I've been thinking a lot about this. And there's just so many things that I could ask, so many things we could talk about, so many paths we could go. But I wrote down a little bit of an outline for us to go over and see where it takes us. So I don't want to hold too tight to it. I'll tell you this from the beginning. My kids and my wife have been telling me lately that I'm becoming more and more like Papa.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So when you hear that, what's the good, the bad, the ugly of that?
Well, the good is that you're probably very playful, have a lot of fun with them.
Most of the time.
It's Schaut's law. If you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. But, the downside is you're probably, kind of stubborn and unwilling to bend on certain things. And, you may not always be as attentive or as quickly attentive as they'd like you to be.
Yeah, so they tease me. I have work mode and fun dad mode. I think the moments that it comes up most is my office is kind of messy. I work out religiously in the morning. You'll see me stretching, doing push-ups, something like that. And then also food. I think food, those are kind of the areas that it comes up where they're like, you're becoming more and more like your dad.
All right. Well, yeah, if your office isn't messy, it means you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, too much organizing.
Yeah, you got to let it go.
So I thought it would be fun to start by saying, get each of us giving a bit of a 2 to 3 minutes of where we're at today. So I'll go first and kind of set the tone of what I'm talking about.
Sure.
So, I'm going to listen to this in 10, 20, 30 years. People will listen to this for a long time. I'm sure my brother, Nick, will listen to it, and our, my kids, your grandkids will listen to it. So, on one hand, this is just a conversation between a father and son about fatherhood. But on another hand, it's also something that we're getting to capture that will be here for a long time. So if we think about right now, this moment in time, where are we at? So I'll go. So I'm 41, moved to Hawaii 3.5 years ago, been married 20 years, 5 kids. In this new transition, I would say in a couple ways. One is my firstborn, Brooklyn, your first granddaughter, is off at college now. So it's I'm in this transition in my home where I've got 4 kids at home, 1 that's off, and then, almost 4 teenagers living in the house who are already kind of thinking about what's next. My business is going well. I think that I've decided, I'm 41, so I've kind of realized, not decided, but realized this is probably what I'm going to do is insurance. I think that over the last 10 years, if you asked me, I would have still probably said I haven't found my career. But now it's I'm in this sweet spot and making a good living. I would say we moved into our dream house. I hope to live in this house the next 10 years. And I feel good. I feel very grateful and stable is the best, as you could use the word stable. But I think I can see clearly this next decade that I'm feel good. Now, could anything change? Sure. But do I think the major things would change as it relates to marriage and kids? No, I feel very stable in this next season of life. So that's where I feel I am showing up today. For you, what stage of life are you in? And then in a couple minutes, where are you at right now?
Well, it's sort of that old thing, where have you been? Where are you now? Where are you going? Which is always a nice, journal topic.
Mm-hmm.
And, like you, I think all the major decisions I've had to make are pretty much history. I'm stable. I mean, I'm retired. I'm happy. I'm healthy. I've got a wonderful relationship with my wife, and I mean, really, we have you and Nick and Paul and 7 grandkids, and we have a little thing on the wall we have at home that has all the grandkids' names with the birth dates and everything like that. And it makes me feel, I mean, biologically, for sure, I'm a success. That Y chromosome's out there, and that's all good. But as far as, the future, I was telling you about, I have a 12-year plan, and I've been working on it. I've got some, it's got 2 parts. One is sort of immediate things to do, and one is more sort of general things to do. And I'm good about that. Just finding that balance between volunteering and having time for reflection. And, so I'm kind of going down the list of what do I want to do with the time I have left. And, there's some wonderful things to think about. And, what can I contribute still? Because I spent my life contributing. I mean, that's when you're an educator, that's what you do. You know how to do something, you pass it on. And when you were dad, it's the same thing. You know how to do something, you pass it on. And, I think you and Nick are I'm getting off topic, but you're wonderful fathers. And I think kind of two ways to look at it. For the father I was and for the father I wasn't in some ways. And I think sometimes that's how, everybody gets to become their own way of being a father, built on what, they were exposed to.
Yeah. 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 So good. So I know we'll come back to some of that stuff. So in thinking about where you're at today, I thought it would be interesting for us to answer these 3 questions. Right now in this season, and I'll go first, but what makes you stressed? What makes you moved? And what brings you to a state of gratitude? So for me, 41, I think what makes me stressed sometimes is obviously like the day-to-day financially, thinking about, paying bills and having a family and feeding them and whatnot. Am I worried about that? No, not really. But I think it can cause stress if I don't check myself and I don't really need to worry. I think what causes me the most stress is seeing this tension of obviously you have a marriage and then 4 daughters and a son. And it's I want my son to become a man. I want my daughters to, it's funny. I know I want Brody to find a great wife, but I think about my daughters more, I think, in finding a good husband or the husband finding them, whatever. So I don't know. That's something that I think about. Right. And I'm in this transition where they're teenagers and it's oh man, it's all over the place sometimes, and I think I've let go recently of this idea of a perfect family or a perfect kid. Like when they're little, you can kind of control their life and outcome a little bit more than they start thinking for themselves.
Everybody they know.
Yeah. Yes. And so that is an interesting state of tension of holding on and letting go of the kids. So that's what I would answer for the stress. For, I think, the moved and grateful. The moved are those moments where there's deep connection with my wife or my kids or family, right? I'm like everything feels right in the world. And it could be, an example would be me and Brody, yesterday we went and got dirt bikes. We've been talking about it for a long time, and just his depth of gratitude in it. It's moving to me to have connection with my kids. And I think it comes down to knowing them. And then the third one is grateful. When do I find myself grateful? And I would say when I pause from the fullness of the calendar and the day, and I look outside and I see all the greenery that I can see right now, or at night when the day is settling and I look up at the stars, and I feel a lot of times that I'm just overcome with a sense of I'm alive, and that's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's difficult from where I am in my life right now to talk about what really gets me stressed, because I don't have a lot of stressors anymore. I'm not working. I'm retired. I have a modest income, and things that are unsettling though are I wish I could contribute more. You want to always make the world a better place. I wish that everyone I knew was at the kind of the same place as far as not having to worry as much about, like you said, what's next for my kids, what's next for my career, what's next for this, what's next for that. And I wish, I could help more. And in some ways I do, honestly, I think, just knowing you, knowing Nick, knowing Paul again, and being able to contribute when I can in any way, is comforting to sort of set aside that stress, if you will. And as far as
Can I ask you about contributing before you answer the moved and grateful? I feel like I'm making a little bit of a transition now, and I don't know if you noticed this in your own life, but do you find or did you find that there was a shift in contribution? Like, I feel like in 20s and 30s, it's like I really wanted to have this big impact on the world. And I was really striving to, whether it be a youth center or youth pastor or whatever, I wanted to have a big impact. And I feel like I'm realizing in my own life that there are fewer relationships that I really like. If I really want to have impact, it could be bringing somebody a bottle of wine. It could be spending time with somebody on the phone. So my question is, did you find a shift that contribution doesn't necessarily have to be this big thing, but it could be bringing someone a meal or something? It's more like the smaller things.
Well, it's kind of two things, because I always felt the best way to improve the world is start with yourself. And if people want to, I never want to be like a leader or a follower. Sort of is the way I've always kind of felt, and that you sort of if you want to, you teach by example rather than direct instruction. And but as a teacher, when I used to have a line when people ask me what I teach, I'd say, well, I teach ethics, but I do it when I teach literature and composition and logic and philosophy. That's kind of how my underlying goal was to give people tools for becoming better themselves in a variety of ways. And again, I think my arena was always language, and I think language is a wonderful tool for self-improvement and sharing what's good and true and real, that sort of thing. And so teaching to me was a way of contributing that was not grand. It was more, my friend became a therapist, and we talked about it that I thought I could reach more people as a teacher than I could as a therapist. The therapist should bring one-on-one small groups, 6, 8 people maybe. And but as a teacher, I saw, gosh, I could see 150 kids a year. And I went to a wedding I went to a funeral recently, and I met several former students, and they still recalled some of those lessons. It was kind of neat.
Yeah, that's special.
Yeah. Just the real short one is that this kid had been camping near us when we were at Lake Pillsbury and had been partying with their friends. And I think I told you the story, but he one of his memories of me as an instructor wasn't something from the classroom. He's like, he said, that one day I came to school and you had a bag for me, and he said, you got this when you were camping. And what was it? It was a beer bong. And he's like, no, the teacher would have done that. But again, that made it okay for him to be who and what he was at that time. And that was one of the things I think helped me as an instructor. And then when I trained teachers, that was one of the things I would always push is that, they're people, and you need to be genuine with them, and, not sort of put on the mantle of I'm this higher being sort of thing that some teachers have. It's like, no, you have to treat them more like family.
Well, and even that, not all family treats family members that way. Which what I'm hearing is, and this is actually one of the things I wrote down 10 gifts that I think you gave Nick and I, which we'll get to later. But the kind of letting somebody be where they are and learn and figure things out. Like, not that you won't guide them, but it's not like, I don't ever really remember it. Like, it has to be this way. It's my way. It's this way. I think that you have been open to letting people experience life and discover their own meaning, maybe.
Well, I think that's more valuable. It's like I said before, I never want to be a leader or follower. And then I bet the followers that, people find truth in all these different places, and they are able to write it down and pass it on. And that's wonderful. And yet I always was, kind of skeptical about other people's truths, because I always would measure it up against mine. And that's something when I taught literature again, or philosophy, is like you look at this philosopher and you measure their truth to your own experience, and you just take what you can and don't take the rest. It's sort of like I used to use the salad bar as a metaphor, is that some people are kidney bean salad, some people are macaroni salad, and so you find what best suits you and you put it on. And especially when working with adolescents, is they try things on and they don't take them off again. And that's part of the wonderful part of being an adolescent, is you go through all those different stages trying to decide out, find out who you really are by trying on different ways of being.
Yeah. Good. All right. So in this current stage of life, what then moves you, and what do you find yourself grateful for?
Oh, gosh. I'm grateful every day for being alive. I've had a few brushes with death, and it's only because of just I lucked out, because when you sort of inherent wonderful qualities of strength, I got this. And I'm grateful for, gosh, living in the time that we live because of for medical science, for instance, is that I wouldn't be alive for a couple of reasons if it weren't for the kinds of things we have now. I had pneumonia as a child, I had, measles and mumps and all those sorts of things, but they were able to treat them in ways that they can't now.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't then, And so I'm grateful for that always. I'm grateful for, all the people I know and people I care about. And there's one of those moments of, pure joy was going over to see my granddaughter Juniper. I went over to Paul's house, and as soon as I get to the door, she's like almost on tiptoe. She's excited. She's reaching up, hold me, Papa. And I pick her up, and she just leans into me and just like kisses me 2-3 times on the cheek. Just that happy to see me, and you don't get that anywhere else. And so I'm wonderfully grateful for that. And again, I'm grateful for the understanding of the universe we have now, that I can be grateful that these 6 elements: oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, calcium, and phosphorus. Those 6 chemicals make up 90% of my physical being, and all the ways they can combine. And it's like just a thrill out of contemplating that. And when I look at the sky at night and I look at the stars like you're talking about, I see they are making these elements, creating right now. And, they're this carbon molecule, carbon atom that's in me has been all the way around and on this planet for thousands and thousands of millions of years. And it started as stardust, an exploding supernova came out of it. And I'm just grateful for that every moment. And again, like I said before, the relationships, it's not just with the little kid thing, but knowing you. One thing about families, you get to know people more intimately than you know everyone else, because you've lived with them in a way. And I remember joking as a kid that I liked growing up in a big family, because you get to know people that you probably wouldn't get to know very well if you weren't living in the same home with them growing up, because we were all so different.
Yeah. It's funny. You wouldn't probably hang out with them at school if it was just given you a choice.
Yeah.
You're like put in this home with this group of people and you have to figure it out.
Yeah. Kind of a secret, but I've always kind of felt like an anthropologist in my life. And even my own family as a child, it's like, I'd studied them and think, well, why do they have these behaviors? Why do they do certain things? And when you have your own family, you kind of create a culture. And, even little games you play, you just get on the floor and tickle or build things with blocks. Whatever you're doing is that you can just make a little event into a game and make it joyous. And so those are the kinds of things I'm grateful for.
What are you learning right now? So for me, and I think part of it is a time of life, is I'm learning to be present, and I'm starting to question some of the things that maybe I aspired for or chased in my 30s. And so I'm really, and the other thing I think is I'm realizing there's kind of this writing on the wall. Brooklyn moved out, and my other kids will be moving out in the next 10 years. The shorter, Violet, a couple years, and the twins, a couple years, and Stella, a little bit more. But I'm realizing that as I'm seeing the timeline shorten with children in my home, I'm wanting to lean more into be present. So that's what I'm learning right now. What is something that you're learning? And let me pause you because this thing keeps beeping and I want to. Okay, so what's something that you're currently learning right now?
Oh, gosh. I was telling you, I was working on my 12 plan. And when you do something like that, it makes things more real. That, my sister's dead, my parents are dead, I just went through a funeral. And, you reach a point in your life where it used to be more weddings and fewer funerals, but now it's been my contemporaries, it's more the other way around. And, it's what I'm learning is that I'm learning that I like learning, and I've known it my whole life, I just kind of finished a phase of learning with the whole paragliding thing. And so now I've got kind of a list of things that I want to move towards. And, it's just a matter of I want to take some classes and things. I want to learn to balance my desire to volunteer for things. I've been a river monitor. I've worked with the film festival. I've done these different things since I've retired, and I like doing them, but I also have to limit the commitment, because otherwise I don't have time for what I'm doing right now, is come and spend a week with you guys. And so you have to balance that to sort of contributing to having reflective time. And So I'm learning that. But the next thing is I'm looking for sort of my next thing. So I like learning, and so I've got kind of list going. I may do probably some art classes because I don't really need a dangerous hobby anymore.
Yeah.
And I think I told you I looked into cloud hopping, which is a single or tandem harness hot air balloon, and I've got all the flight classes I need for that. But I just don't really need a dangerous hobby, and it's also really weather specific. So it's really limited to when you can pursue it. It's got to be a cool, calm morning. And so I'm looking at maybe I've never had musical talent. I've had vocal talent, and thought maybe about there's an old choir in our area that I might get involved.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, just something different, that sort of thing. So that's what I'm learning right now is that. I'm just, I'm just always reading. I'm reading like several books right now, and I'm learning that when you're trying to reach across to people with perhaps a different social political worldview about how to communicate in a way that's not sort of adversarial, and how to do it in a way that is sort of mutually beneficial and kind and gentle, rather than people online can become brutal.
Yeah.
And I said, how do you do that in a way that's satisfying and useful? And so I'm kind of trying to learn how to do that. I would probably write a letter to the editor every week and get 2 published a month.
Yeah.
And send things. I have a kind of a Facebook group that we share things, and sometimes it's like hey, you can look at it this way as well, you guys. Like to do the devil's advocate.
It's good. Dang, I gotta pause this again.
I should do it.
This thing keeps.
What's blinking?
It's like, what's my...
You said you heard a beep?
Okay.
It is on the airplane.
Okay, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit.
Do it.
Sure.
Yeah, it's because I spoke loudly and he's protecting you.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. Do you remember when you first heard you were going to be a dad and how you felt and what that meant to you?
Oh, yeah. I was wanting to have children. And, most of the girls I knew or dated in LA were all actresses or wannabe actors. They were like career focused, even your own mother was. And, when we got pregnant, it was like, finally, I really enjoyed being a child, and not many people do. I had a blast, and I wanted to, let that happen for somebody else, and so, I remember writing it was a creative writing class at UCLA, and I wrote an essay. It was titled "It'll Stop Your Life," and it was, it sounds like it's going to be all negative. Okay, you can do all these things you can't now, and it was like, it'll stop that, but only to open up this other thing to happen. And just first time holding you. I had to cut the cord. It's really kind of neat. You're all blue and you cut it, and then you start to pink up when you start breathing on your own. And it's really, it was wonderful. Yeah, it really was. And one of the neat things about it, after that initial joy time, it's wonderful, because I was, I don't know, mid second half of my 20s, and I didn't want to wait too long. And, I knew people that had them right in high school. I knew people who waited till they were 40 to have kids. And I think I kind of hit that sweet spot where I'd been able to have sort of a bachelor life and travel around and have no baggage and do all that. And then I was at a place in my life where I wanted to have a house and a family and children.
You were ready for that.
Yeah.
You don't really hear a lot of people say, I enjoyed my childhood, whether they did or they didn't. You don't really hear that statement with such conviction. If you were to, or when you think back of your childhood, what are the couple things that you go that lead you to say that?
Well, it's funny, because I think for most kids, you used to say this as a term for teenagers, but I think it's for all children, is that they're like wonderfully miserable, because you don't have any kind of control over so many things when you're a child. And it's something that I probably some kind of birth defect, but I've never really wanted anything passionately in a way as far as stuff or careers or anything like that. Is that I was always happy without much. The joke when we were a family, when I was little, and I was still like kind of a messy little kid, is they go and get ice cream shop, and they got me an empty cone. And I was happy with that empty cone. And they were happy too, because I didn't make a big mess. But I think that And we were just talking about the other day, is that when you find yourself, wanting something you can't have, want something else.
Mm.
Is a way to approach that. And I just never needed anything. I mean, I enjoyed getting up and taking the dog out for a walk when it was, 10 below zero in Wisconsin in the morning when no one else wanted to get up, and it's like, my parents used to tease me about it. I'd be out there singing, I was having a blast. And so, I don't really know what to attribute it to other than that was just a certain quirk I had that I was able to enjoy myself when other people weren't.
Mm.
And again, to bring back the anthropologist thing, sometimes I think it's because I've always kind of had that innate way of kind of stepping outside and looking at me in the situation. And, when my brother and my mother or my sister or my mother, whatever, and any of my family who's having a big kind of conflict, I always kind of watched it and didn't quite understand why they were so passionate about it. It's just, how it's going to end anyway. And so just go there.
Mm.
Yeah. So I was just happy.
I love it. Okay, so finding out you're going to be a dad. What about the season of becoming a grandfather? What was that like, and what is it? What is being a grandfather?
Well, a couple of things is that one is, when you have your kids when you're younger, you don't really know what you're doing, and it's kind of, all kind of flapping the seat of your pants kind of thing. You're like, well, let's try this, and that didn't work, so let's try this.
Mm-hmm.
And you're exhausted. It's a sleep deprivation experiment and all kinds of stuff like that. And as a grandparent, you don't have all of that piece. And so you can, you can take your time with kids in a way that you can't, because when you're working and going to school and you're trying to do your kids, it's like you got this much time and boom, it's over. And with grandkids, you can savor it in a way. And, the lighter side is that I can use all my old jokes again. I mean, I still remember when Brody figured out the banana trick, where you can levitate the banana, the last piece of the banana. You put your hand over it and you pinch it, and the banana kind of lifts up, so it looks like you're levitating it. And I remember when he looked at me, and goes, "You're pinching it." And so I know he couldn't use it for him anymore, but I could use it with Bodie and Juniper. Mm-hmm. So I still had some time. So that's one of the neat things about grant is that you have the time, and you also, I think, have more of an inner peace at when I'll be 70 in a few months, and you are much more comfortable with yourself and your limitations and also your expectations.
Yeah.
I don't have to be the disciplinarian. I don't have to be all these other things. I can just be sort of a resource, if you will. And I like that, I like having that role.
So speaking of roles, what would you say is the role of the father, right? So you're a grandfather now. You serve as a dad for me, for Nick, for Paul. What would you say the role of the father is?
Well, I think first and foremost is unconditional love. Because your kids aren't you. You don't want them to be you. They're going to be different in lots of ways, and yet you love them. You love them with your whole being. And I think that to me is most of it. Again, you're a teacher. Like I said before, is that you try to show them how to live. You try to protect them. Because one of the things about kids, especially boys, is you don't know your limits till you exceed them. Mm-hmm. And so you want to kind of keep an eye on that. But those are, that's really what I see. I don't have a whole long kind of list of fatherhood roles. I think the most important one is to love unconditionally, and everything else is in some ways a mentor relationship. In some ways, it can be like a friend relationship. There's all these different ways of parsing it, but I think the important thing is just loving them. And I guess the other piece would be providing a stable sort of platform for them to. I used to talk about, one of the goals as a parent is to get your kids launched, but not just get them launched to launch them, is getting launched. I wanted both you and Nick to be able to, be able to support yourselves, because that was important to me when I was in that lesson. Mm-hmm. Can I do this? Can I be a man and support myself without any kind of, scaffolding? And I wanted you to have that, but I also wanted you to find something that you could do to support yourself that you enjoy doing, because I know many people who spent their lives at jobs they didn't like, but it paid the bills. And I thought, well, if you got to find something to pay the bills, it's not really work if you have a way of living that is satisfying. Teaching did that for me. Mm-hmm. It was very satisfying. I really had a blast.
Well, it goes back to so unconditional love, and then you use the word stability. And when we were talking earlier about having impact on the world, and I kind of was asking, is it grand or is it these micro things? And you had said it kind of first starts with you like leading yourself. Like, am I contributing to the
It's a
planet?
better place today than it was
because of me.
when you go to bed. You think that, is it better or not because I was here today?
And so that unconditional love, it almost starts with unconditional, like loving yourself, and then having somewhat of a stable life, and that you're providing that image to your kids, to your sons, right? So it's like you lived that way, and so you gave that to Nick and I.
And it's a model.
It's a model. So with that, I thought it would be fun because I know language is really important to you. I'm going to ask you this for 2 words, but what does Schaut mean to you? So our last name is Schaut. I think in some ways it's a little sad in our day and age that I don't know a bunch about my great-grandfather or my great-great-grandfather, right? We've kind of almost in our day and age, we've gotten really just into like our kind of life, not thinking about like where we've come from. When you think about Schaut, last name, your dad's last name, you passed it to Nick and I. What does Schaut mean to you?
Well, it's a German word and it means seer, seer, seer. And I always kind of like that because, it's trying to be, it's not just introspective, but sort of, I think you have a clear vision of the world, how it is, what is it really? And, but, it's also, for me, I'm always, I've got some ancestor stories that you probably don't know because I got my brother David did a lot of research on it and passed it on to me. But our family, I knew my grandfather and my grandma on my father's side, but Uncle Carl and all those other guys were gone already, so I didn't have that kind of experience with. And they usually didn't tell family stories because, especially people like that, they were farmers in the Midwest that had migrated from the East Coast, and they didn't have history. They really oftentimes were just starting fresh. And again, sometimes I think with immigrants, a lot of them, especially if they want to become part of the new culture, they abandon that history. And, but, just to a little pride is that the first Schaut that got to the United States was a ship's carpenter. He jumped ship in Williamsburg, New York. And the family there split into two Schaut families. One's in Rochester area in New York now, and one came to the Midwest, Illinois, Wisconsin area. And both families liked horses. And, my grandfather was a builder, a carpenter, and his hobby was quarter horses. And his big thing was to go to the county fair, and if he did well, the state fair, and ride and get into sulking and just, get that horse going. And so again, Schaut is, it's joke. you probably heard all the shout it out and twist and shout and all that kind of stuff from popular culture. But it just, to me, it's just, kind of a foundation for me as far as that you're solid. That's kind of what it means to me.
Yeah, love it. For me, looking up the German word, the seer, and a couple other things that I had found is like the headsman of the tribe or the sheriff of the town kind of thing. And for me, I think the tone that I saw you set more for our family was the leader of the home, to lead the home. And I think sometimes I can definitely fall into be more controlling than I really saw you be. And I think it comes down to I just have such high expectations for everything, and I don't know why that is. Maybe firstborn son, I'm not sure. Like birthday on the 4th of July, like everything's going to be epic. I remember one time in a marriage counseling with Sarah, the counselor, he's like, Ned, you kind of like you expect when you get out of a car anywhere you go that there's just like going to be music playing and wind in your hair, essentially, like a scene in a movie. And Sarah and I both started laughing because it's true. I just kind of expect everything to be so epic, which I think can lead me to be a little controlling at times. But again, as I go back to like, what am I learning now is to be present in here and now and what I have in front of me, is the hope to, as a leader in my home, instead of putting myself as the center of the story, how am I making Sarah or Brooklyn or Brody or Violet or Presley or Stella kind of the center and making their life a bit without setting false expectations, that I think I've had at times. Okay, so the next word I wanted to ask is Wolfgang. So your middle name is Wolfgang, my middle name is Wolfgang, Brody's middle name is Wolfgang. I love it, right? It's like a badge of honor. It's just a cool middle name, and it comes down again for me when I think about Wolfgang. The meaning of it is one, I feel like it connects me to you. It connects me to Brody in a way that nobody else is connected. Like we have this cool middle name. But also it just, again, comes down to this wolf pack, this, like our family's so close. And I love that we've created that. So for you, you've carried that name for almost 70 years. What does Wolfgang mean to you?
Well, first, actually, I wanted to, if I can just back up a little bit to that last thing about my grandfather and my father, and you, I think, all have that quality of, you kind of like to tell people what to do. You like to be the one in charge, You like to, and I always, I think it skipped me, because when I was like teaching teachers and things like that, and whatever I was doing WASP and all that, is that, you have to tell people what to do, but I never enjoyed it, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I always like to give them enough freedom to figure it out. Is kind of how I like to do it. And because I think you learn a lot from your mistakes and your stumbles, and you help keep people from doing things that are, problematic. But I had like quick stories. I had a student teacher who didn't want to, make it hard for kids who had late work. She was going to mark down for late work. And she's like, you can turn it up to a week late and still get full credit, all that kind of stuff. And she said she never understood why teachers were like that. And that, she had that problem herself. And so I said, well, you're the student, you can set up your deal and see how it works. And after doing it for not even a month, she was all of a sudden having, grades were due, and she had all of a sudden all kinds of extra work to do because when the time she had to grade, it was gone. And so she had to make time out of her work time to finish it. So she learned why that would probably be a good rule for her to have as a teacher, rather than just be telling her she couldn't do it. And so I think as now to get back to the Wolfgang thing, a little digression. I wanted to say that, but my father chose Wolfgang, I think, because at the time when he was growing up, before World War II and during World War II, everything German was frowned upon. They used to have these big beer gardens. Used to have all kinds of things. United States, big German population where we lived, Midwest, and they all were, are they forced colonists? Are they spies? Are they, family members? So there's a lot of negative stuff. And I think, he never told me this, but I think that was part of it. He wanted to, say you can be German and not a Nazi kind of, and had some pride in that. And so I think he threw that out there. And I always liked it because it was just quirky. And as a child, I went through a phase where I built all these monster models. I liked all those monster films. And so I had a Wolfman for a while when I was a kid. I changed my name to Lon Chaney, and that was the actor who played the Wolfman. And he was a man of 1,000 faces, and he did all his own makeup. And so, that Wolfman was really cool. And so I liked that quality. And, people would always comment on it, and I'm usually positive. Wolfgang, that's unusual. And so I just like that. And because that was my experience, I wanted to pass it on. And that you would have something that was a little unusual, but not negative. I didn't name you, Ichabod, and so I just wanted to pass that on. And so that's as a kid, I enjoyed it. And as a father, I enjoyed being able to pass it on. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, no, I think it just connects you, me, and Brody. It's like now I kind of hope he has his son's middle name be Brody one day, or be Wolfgang one day. But yeah, it's a badge of honor for me. Now, with words and Ichabod, or whatever you just said, what's a favorite word of yours? So you are a studier of language and words. I would never want to attempt Scrabble with you. Okay, what's your favorite word?
Yes.
Why?
Yes, because of how it makes me feel when you say that to me. Is one of those words? It's an affirmation. It's yes, it's like opening a door.
But what's interesting is you're not a yes man, right? Like you would say no, right?
Sure.
So
yeah, sure.
Yeah, you would say no. But yes opens the door to,
Well, yeah, it's like this sort of thing where, I've always felt that anytime you have that chance to, ease somebody's path, help somebody somehow, You do it not because you're patting yourself on the back, not because it's even the right thing to do. It's just you just do it because you can.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when someone needs help, you say yes. I mean,
Oh.
I had that. I used to have in my classroom, even my office at home, different words. And that was always one of them that I had up. It's just yes, just remember yes.
Yeah. As I thought about asking you the question, the word that I put was love. And I think in similar context or similar reasoning, is like that's this word that is like everybody wants to know and feel, similar to a yes connects you in a way. And love is one of these things that you don't fully understand. It'll take a lifetime to learn, but it connects people. Like I think everybody wants to be known and belong, which those kind of go together. But saying yes,
belonging, I think, is sort of an attribute of love.
Mm-hmm.
I think love is one of those big catch-all words that there's lots of ways of love.
Right. Well, I like the word yes. When you think about the many books that you have read, what is that you're like this book shaped me immensely and is a very important book to me?
It's neat you asked that because one of the things I was thinking about before this interview was was that we all have several fathers. We have our biological father,
right,
but we have mentor teachers, friends, uncles, whatever. And I used to joke that a lot of my friends were dead people because they
authors from the past.
Yeah. They had some truth that when I measured against mine matched up, and they were mentors to me. There's just
it's hard to pick, probably, yeah.
But there's one. Actually, one reason I'm going to say this one only because I had an interaction with a student recently about this book that it changed his life and affected him, and that he lives his life by some of the things that this book had to offer. And it was Cannery Row by John Steinbeck, and I think it distills a lot of the ideas in a book like Grapes of Wrath, and there was his more famous book. But just the idea, again, it's about unconditional love in a lot of ways. And, you can, yes, one in the beginning, I got this memorized. Cannery Row is a poem, a steak, a grating noise, a color of light, a tone, a nostalgia, a dream. And he talks about in the book about you can look at the world through two people. You can see these guys living on Cannery Row, and you can see them as losers, bums, blights on the town, scavengers, all sons of bitches. Or you can look to the same people different people at those same people, and they're saints and martyrs and angels, and that it's something I think is a really neat. It was for me a real good tool for looking at the world, looking at family, looking at my students, looking at relationships. Is that you can look at them with compassion, or you can look at them with kind of judgment. And one can make you feel better for a short term, but it doesn't last, and it actually diminishes you. But if you look at them through the other people, it just basically just lifts everybody up. And that even the homeless guy who's mentally ill and the drug addict, that kind of stuff, he's got a mother, he had a kid, he had dreams.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, you can't see that when you look at them, but they're there. It's like, actually, we were driving one time, and I think it was you. Yeah, I think it was you. We were driving behind somebody who was going slow, and, you start getting aggravated with them. And it's like, I said, I imagine it's like my grandma or somebody, or someone who maybe is having a medical problem and they can't drive fast right now, or they have a vision problem, they can't drive. So I'm not angry with them. I can, they are interfering with what I want to do, but anger just gets in the way. And that I'd much rather be compassionate towards them and hope they get home safe, and that I get home safe. And if a couple of minutes late, it's not the end of the world.
It's funny because in either scenario, so similar to the peephole or driving behind the slow person, either scenario, you're telling yourself a story that you really have no idea.
Yeah.
Right? Like this person's an idiot and they're driving slow because whatever.
The world hates me.
Yeah, whatever story you want to tell. And then the other one, you're telling the story of this person deserves my acknowledgement as a human in a different way, right? In a more loving way. And it's just interesting how it seems as though a lot of us default to the more selfish stories, right? But we don't have to. right? We don't
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah, actually, that's the book I was telling you about. Hope for Cynics is has that idea. Is it's easy to fall into the default anger, judgmental,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very cynical. Really, is that you assume the worst of people rather than assuming the best. And it's like I just read this thing about the welfare queen. All the people on welfare are losers and they're stealing our money and all that kind of stuff. Versus that people that are getting it need it.
Mm-hmm.
They'd rather not have it. And for every cheater, there's hundreds of people.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember people asking me about teaching in high school. How do you deal with teenagers? It's like they're all I hear is bad stuff. And I said, yeah, for every kid, everything you hear about it bad, there's 100 good kids.
Yeah.
But I said they don't make the. And so keep that in mind when you're like the old iceberg principle. You see 10%.
Yeah.
The rest is hidden. Yeah. And the thing is, when you apply people, you realize there's all this stuff going on. But you also need to apply it to yourself. There's a lot that you don't know about yourself. Sometimes, why did I do that? You realize there's things that you can't necessarily consciously. And
so does that lead you to judge yourself more or less as well?
No, actually, it leads me to journal. Because journaling for me is a way to find out what I think and feel.
Yeah.
As well as the old Joan Didion thing, you live things twice when you journal because you get to relive it But I like to sometimes, why am I a little anxious today? Why am I unsettled? Why am I happy? And journaling sometimes helps use that tool to help it gel in something that I can actually look at.
Well, let's just take a little tangent, which I was going to talk about later, but I think it's beneficial to bring up right now. But I got to put this in.
Children, bigger moments in the books. Yeah, the man who stood his life at rest. Out of the garbage, pearls. I mean, there's all these books that are just
so good.
Well, especially when you're at that age. I think a lot of books when I was in that lesson. Siddhartha was a big, Well, the image of living your life as a rock falling through water, not letting all of that other stuff distract you from finding your real self.
That's good.
I always like that image.
Yeah, that's cool. So you bring up journaling. So this is one of the 10 things which I'm sure will hit some of these things, but gifts that you've given me. And So you bring up journaling, and I have twice now read your book. I don't know if you'd call it a book or you'd call it your thesis, but you had brain surgery when you were 39, and you gave me a copy of it when I was 39. I don't know if that was on purpose or not.
It just happened.
Yep. But I got to read it, and then I reread it. But one of the things that's so cool, I mean, the basis, and I'll let you tell what the basis is, but just so our listeners can know, you had brain surgery. You were told you weren't going to live. You were told you weren't going to work. You came home to a house you didn't recognize. And it's almost like you had a first Richard, second Richard, but your journals were something that you turned to really discover who you were and maybe which part of those you wanted to bring into this new season of this new life. But so as I've read this, one of the things that I really enjoyed reading was the journal entries. So in your thesis, you pull a lot of journal entries in. So you kind of talk about what's going on, and then you'll put like 4, 5, 10 journal entries into the story. One of the things that I noticed recently as I reread it before we met today was you would journal, and then it would say SD for same day or later that night, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like you might be feeling a way that you're expressing in the morning, and then come back, and it would. And I remember several times it's like, oh, I'm not in this mood anymore, or I shook off this funk, or now I'm in a funk. It could be either way. You could be expressing something in the morning, and then have a shift, but then come back to the processing of it. So, and it could be a simple sentence or two, or something you want to remember a moment with Nick or I or mom. So journaling was something that I started to do it around 18 because you had always journaled. So it was a gift you gave me. But maybe talk a little bit more about journaling and what it's done for you, maybe that season of life, and I don't know what comes up.
Well, after the brain surgery, there's a medical term for it. I can't think of it right now, but it's like a loss of self. I didn't have a self, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I was frightened because I had a wife and 2 children, and I had a job and that I had to go back to that didn't remember any of it. It was all gone. Mm-hmm. And so the journals helped me because I used them as a tool to kind of figure out who to pretend to be at first. Mm-hmm. And so I had to pretend to be this guy I entered his life and I didn't know anything about him or whatever, and use those as a resource for, pretending to be Richard for a while till I actually could. At the end of the book, I was like, the book was part of like what journals do for me, is that it allowed me to realize this is who I am now.
Mm-hmm.
I embrace this as me rather than this other. And so it's like when you cross your eyes, you see two of everything. When you stop, they become one again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like that.
And you've continued to journal.
Oh, yeah. And, I find my own journals, just to get back to what you were saying before, is that my journals tend to be more optimistic in the morning because I'm more optimistic. I'm a morning guy. I annoy people because I'm up happy.
Yeah.
Because I know people wake up angry. And what's wrong? I don't know. I agree, whatever it is. I had a friend with the Tai Chi school who said, I wake up angry and I'm mad. It's like, well, gosh, I wake up so happy. I wish we could work this out somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, journaling allows you to get back to things that you tend to, your normal stream of consciousness. It just, any little distraction that goes off on a tangent and allows you to focus and get closer to what's, I think, more genuine.
Yeah, what you want to be most genuine versus, and it kind of comes back, you were kind of talking in between of the rock falling through the water, right? And I think a lot of the things that you're saying, even as like talking about enjoying being a child, is you haven't really, your circumstances haven't determined fully your outcome in life, right? I mean, they have impact on your life, but the journaling, I think, allows one to come and say, okay, this happened, or this is how I'm feeling, and then a little bit better for you to be able to decide what you want to do about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's again working with disturbed children and adolescents. And worked with emotionally disturbed kids for a long time. And one of the things that you teach is that we all have had crises in our lives, and yet you don't let that define you.
Mm-hmm.
And at a certain point, you want to stop saying, I'm like this because my mom was like that, or because my dad was like this, or because whatever. I was hurt. Is that okay? You don't deny that. You make it part of yourself. But you don't let that destroy you, and that that doesn't define you, and that you can redefine yourself. And I think therapy, journaling, all those things help people get to that.
So you talked about you kind of just mentioned your dad a minute ago, or parents and circumstances. And then we talked earlier about how, you mentioned for you being a dad to me, that there's things that you did that shaped me being a dad, and there's things you didn't do that probably shaped me being a dad. So when you think about your own dad, what's something that you really appreciated about him? And then what's something that you'd say, I wish he did differently, although you wouldn't go back and change it, right? Because it probably shaped who you are.
Wouldn't be who I am now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But if you were to say, this is something I really value about my dad, and this is something that I wish he would have done differently, or I did differently because of the way that he did it.
Yeah, well, my dad, worked hard. I liked what he did. I used to go to the lab with him. He's a research chemist. Mm-hmm. And, but he had sort of that 50s parenting philosophy, and I remember him saying this, is kids are like animals. You got to train them.
He would say that?
Yeah. And he meant it. And that was his parenting style.
Yeah.
You should train them. My friend Mike talks about his father, and they had similar dads. And he said, we were all second-class citizens. I was like, well, yeah, there was only one TV and no remote. And, Dad chose what was on.
Yeah.
And there was no, Saturday mornings we got to watch cartoons because he was busy doing something. Mm. But other than that, it was, it was Dad and there's no questioning it,
mm-hmm.
At all. It was a bam. But my sister said she was afraid of him. And I was too dumb to be afraid of him, I think. I remember having one fight with him in my life. And it was because, it was 1968, I think. It was a Democratic convention in Chicago, and people protesting the Vietnam War, and my dad's watching the news, and I came in to watch a little bit of it. And this policeman had grabbed a protester by his long hair and swung around and hit him with a billy club. And my dad started laughing. Mm. And I was trying to grow my hair out, but my hair was probably touching my ears at that time. It was pretty long.
Yeah.
And not really long at all. Your hair is much long. But anyway, I just mumbled something under my breath, like jerk or something like that. My dad said, what did you say? I said, he was a jerk. Whenever my dad said, you know what? He looked at me and said, I think I'm going to give you a hair. He was like trying to establish that he was the man, and was the man of the house. It was his house, and I was not going to be.
How old were you roughly?
I was 13.
Okay.
And I was going to be in 1968. Yeah. I was, in his mind, I was being disrespectful. And so, anyway, he didn't catch me. He tried. I mean, we were in the back, and my mom was like afraid that neighbors were going to call the cops, she said, because my dad was like, I was like, no. And, it's 13. You can be quicker than your dad when he's in his 40s. And that's just the reality. And so that was something. But what was interesting about it, I felt, we never talked about it directly, but we had kind of an agreement after that he treated me different after that. And I wasn't just under my thumb kid. I was a person. I was, because all those things happen at 13, 14, 15, when you start to become who you are in a lot of ways. I'm more of a man now than I was. A lot of religions have their rituals for that. And so that it changed our relationship. Anyway, that was something that happened that I'm not sure if it fits your question as much as what he didn't do is he didn't beat me up, which I think he wanted to show that he was still man of the house. But I think he was resigned to the fact that his role was limited in that capacity at that point because I was bigger. And as far as other things that he did that I'm grateful that he did, again, like I said before, he took me to the lab, and I was just curious. I loved the labs. I mean, I loved chemistry as a kid and as an adult. I mean, I still I read about it, and I talked about the elements earlier. But things he didn't do. Actually, the things he did do. I mean, his other thing was he took us camping, and that's something that I passed on to you. And our camping wasn't tent camping, a little bit, but mostly it was going to Fence Lake, which is a little property up in northern Wisconsin, and we go and get a cabin and had canoes. Yeah, and, we canoed on the river. We did all that. So we had all the outdoor stuff, which I'm glad he did. I mean, even things that he didn't understand because we were different. He kind of, he was a big football guy, basketball guy. He refereed football and basketball so he couldn't see well enough to actually do it anymore. And I wasn't that kid. And I think it was interesting for him when I started doing that. I was a pro dancer for a while, making money as a performer dancing. And I remember my mom came to see me perform in Chicago one time. I think she probably dragged him there. But I remember telling me, I said, Dad, you always wanted an athlete as a child. This is athletic. And he was like, okay, I'll grant you that one. It was funny. He had that big laugh. Yeah,
huge laugh.
Yeah. And, things things I didn't know about him that I kind of wish I'd known, because he's like me in a lot of ways, very private about a lot of things. And because I ran track, and I did well. It's my granddaughter, but he ran track in college, and I didn't even know that. Even though we talked about having several fathers. We had a neighbor, Mr. Strom, and his father were sort of mentor father figures to me. And I used to go running with Mr. Strom all the time. You go long distance running all the time running. And, my dad never mentioned that he'd done that in college.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was just something. But he was one of those guys that compartmentalizes his life. And a lot of people do, where they kind of take something that they're not doing anymore, and it just goes over here, and they just don't even do anything with it anymore.
So, question, you're not the oldest in your family. There's 7 of you.
I'm the middle one. I'm the normal one.
Yeah.
Actually, there's 6.
6.
Yeah.
So why did you name me after your dad? This just came to me now, right? Because in a lot of ways, you are, I don't want to say more rebellious than the others, but you left high school and went on a motorcycle trip to Mexico. You've lived in Chicago. You lived in New York. You moved to Los Angeles, where you met Mom. I mean, you lived more of a like vagabond, rebellious life in that regard, where your dad seemed more kind of strict, straight, whatever. So as you're telling me stories about him and your relationship with him, what led you to want to name me after him? Because that feels like an honoring, respectful kind of a thing.
Well, yeah, definitely. The first part of your intro to that question was that, I never really wanted to be anything. I had a wanderlust. I just wanted to do things. And as soon as I got sort of journeyman level of something, I want to try something different. And so I wanted to, collect experiences rather than things was always my joke. But what I liked about, my father's name was Edward, but my grandma just called him Ned. She just called him Ned. It was a nickname. It's a nickname for Edward. And so I thought, well, I thought about naming him Edward at first, but it's like, I didn't want to do that because nobody knew him as Edward.
Mm-hmm.
And what I liked about Ned, a couple of things, is that I liked that it was one syllable. I don't know why it seems silly, but from a language point of view, but I just like that. Like Rich rather than Richard most of my life. I wanted to, again, like you said, I wanted to honor him because there was all those, wonderful attributes. And I think one of the most important attributes for him was that he was a rock for a lot of people. He was a person who was more than willing to give you advice, but also willing to listen. And, I got the listen part. I tended to not want to give people advice. I mean, students all the time, like, what would you do? Choosing colleges and things like that. So it's not what I would do. It's what is right for you to do. And so I can, listen and help you find out what you want to do without telling you what I would do, because that's not the question you need to ask. And my dad had that, he was unwavering in who he was, real solid in who he was. He didn't do what most of us do, question ourselves a lot. He was, one of the things that actually I said in the book, and I always felt as a child reading, is that one thing I liked about books is people in books were always so certain, and that he was generally certain. And I thought that was a quality that I wanted to honor. Mm-hmm. So you became Ned, and you're pretty certain.
I feel like I'm pretty certain. I do find, because I would say that you're a pretty certain person in getting a glimpse into your journals, right? To get to read somebody's journals is pretty intimate, right? And so I do find some I think most people would say that I'm very certain, very convicted in my beliefs and whatnot. And I'd say the same about you. But it's interesting when you look kind of into the mind, which is the journal, really, you do get to see a bit more of the questioning, the wrestling, maybe more than questions, but the wrestling of the meaning of life.
Yeah. And I think sometimes the certainty is built on that ability to question.
I would agree, because sometimes if somebody's so certain, I think they're full of shit, because it's just like, it's almost like they're saying it so strongly that they're trying to convince themselves versus somebody else. Like, I need everybody to believe exactly like I believe. Otherwise, like, my whole world's going to fall apart, which I think I've lived some of my life that way, less now. But yeah, it's interesting to learn about your dad. I wanted to ask you, right, if I'm thinking about one day I'll be 70 listening to this, right? And you won't be walking on this earth anymore.
Well, I'm got my first 70 here.
Yeah.
Who knows?
We could, there's so many things. I could ask for timelines. I could ask for history. I could dig into, the brain surgery alone, you could spend a whole 2 hours discussing. But I want to ask you two questions. What are three major events in your life? Like, if you're kind of at this tail end starting to reflect, what are the three major events? It's like, what are those? And then same question, but what are there three minor things, right? Like, if anybody on the outside kind of saw them, it's like, yeah, that's kind of normal. It's a small thing. But for you, it had impact, right? So I'll give you an example. Maybe your house burning down, right? We could have used the brain surgery as an example. Maybe the brain surgery or the house burning down would be like this major kind of moment in your life on this earth. And then maybe something minor would be like, easy one is like you're having your first kid or something like that. It's like everybody's going to do that, but it was big for you. Or it could be somebody said something to you when you were in the 7th grade and you still remember it.
Still mad.
Yeah. Or you're still happy. Well, either way. But what are three events in your life that you're like, these events were pivotal? And what are three micro moments that were pivotal?
All right. Well, one comes to mind just when we were saying it's kind of a micro one, but it was a good life lesson. Is that Mrs. Healy was a teacher I had, and she's the one that told me when I was having a kind of a weird relationship with this girl who was kind of manipulative, whatever, and it just wasn't healthy, I don't think. And so she just gave me the line. She says, a canary learns to love its cage, and that stuck with me. And I thought, well, I don't want to be in a cage, And yeah, it's easy and convenient to just go with the status quo. Mm-hmm. And yet it's not really living. And so that's a little one. Again, big one, of course, was, meeting Kim. And, we were dating. We weren't even really planning on getting married right away or anything like that. We were dating. And then, we got pregnant. and we got married, and we had you, and all this stuff that follows. And that's definitely a major life-changing event because, you know, we hadn't gotten pregnant. We might not have stayed together. And, you know, big important lessons that I got from her were, trust and loyalty, that I hadn't kids. I was just kind of always going somewhere. And so I tended to let people go and just move on and start again and do all that. And so that was a major life-changing event. You're part of that, and important part of that. Another again was the brain surgery. And when I write about it, I call it my BS. But because my plans were different, your life would have been different if I hadn't had that. My plan was to get that degree, start working at like a JC instead of a high school, and then get my doctorate and then work at a university. That was kind of my life goal, stepping stone plan, since I decided to stay into teaching. And but again, getting into teaching was another life-changing event because my friend Chris Wells, who was the therapist, and we talked about what we want to do, and he's the one that got me started in teaching because I graduated with my English degree, and I was thinking about, well, what I'm going to do, journalism, I'm going to go back to school, what I'm going to do, I don't want to wait tables any longer. And he said, come down to Canyon Verde School. They could use you here. They're all too uptight. They need somebody who's going to just, like these kids anyway, because they were all violent kids. Mm-hmm. And so that changed my life. And once I started doing it and I realized that it was satisfying, I was good at it, I got my credential and the rest is history. And so, that event changed things. But what else? I was one more. It's kind of, I don't know if it's big or little, but I was dating a girl who, when I was doing martial arts, and since just right out of high school, I think, and when you're still in high school, and you get trophies in two arenas. There's sparring and there's forms, mm-hmm. And she was really good at forms, very graceful and strong and all that kind of stuff. And I asked her, I said, what is it that allows you to do this? Because she was doing forms that were above her rank, and she was good at it and getting trophies in it. And I said, I'd rather get trophies in forms than sparring. So I didn't really like sparring because you have to like to hurt people to get really good. And I got my trophies in doing that, but I thought I can do this, but it's not what I want to do. And so she said she took ballet classes. And so she said, come along with me. I was like, ballet classes, that's for sissies. I don't want to do that, And she said, yeah, come check it out. And I went and checked it out. And I wouldn't wear a leotard. I wore long underwear to my first ballet class. And I took a class, and the guy he was a Cuban dancer. He was teaching at the Conservatory of Music in Milwaukee. And I impressed him somehow, and he gave me a scholarship. And so I got a scholarship at the conservatory, and I got all the ballet lessons with him and some jazz. And then I went to Chicago and got all dialed into the jazz dance. And so I had the whole career of going to New York, all that kind of stuff. And so all of that was just from a question. Mm-hmm. Took my life another direction. Yeah. There's so many little sort of points on the graph of your life, mm-hmm. That made it change direction.
One or two more that come to mind?
Oh, gosh.
Big or small?
Well, I remember telling people, I never had a temper. I never realized I had a temper until I had children because I never had anybody push my buttons that way. Yeah. Or that I just couldn't walk away from. You know what I mean? It's like when people are pushing your buttons, I'll see you later. But with kids. And so, you guys taught me a lot about myself. Mm. And, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have children, because initially Kim didn't want to have children initially. I was like, like I said earlier, I want to collect experiences. And having kids was something I knew was a major life event. And you're not really complete until you've done certain things, I think. And so I wanted to, have you as an experience, and it's been one. And
yeah, it's funny you say, like the idea of young 20s, all of us probably like at some degree say, yeah, I don't want kids because there's so many things you kind of aspire for in life. Like you kind of mentioned mom, and she was aspiring for a lot in young 20s, but how much it changes. Like I wouldn't trade anything for being a kid, for being a parent. Yeah. And I know for you and for mom and the same. And it's like you, and I get it. There are people who don't have kids and that's fine and stuff, but the fullness experience of like, I'm part of you. Brody's part of me. Like he's part of me. He's part of this other human I decided to do life with, Sarah. It's like such an interesting thing. So I think this full experience of life to be able to have kids is pretty amazing.
Yeah. I know I hope I don't offend anybody, but I might get a little annoyed when people say my dogs are my children. Because it's not the same, but you can't explain it to them. And I get it. And that's their way of getting unconditional love. And I'm glad it works for them and all that kind of, but, there's like you said, there's a fullness, there's richness. Just the idea of you're exhausted from work, you're exhausted from school. It's 2 a.m. and the baby's crying, and you put them in the car seat and drive them around LA at night, and the lights put them back to sleep. And,
Yep.
You can't explain to somebody why that's satisfying, but it is.
But it is. Yeah. It's like this meaning. When you think about being a dad, and now you're almost 70, you see Nick and I and Paul. What are you most proud of when you see us?
Oh gosh, it's hard to put into a list, because when you started that question, the first thing I was going to say is I'm proud of you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And
so pick Nick for a minute.
What sounds like we're going to have sandwiches on the beach.
What are you proud of when you think of Nick?
Oh gosh, so many things, but I think a couple things I'm really proud of, and not because he got them from me, but one of them is that he knows how to get on the floor and play with a kid.
Mm-hmm.
He can do that.
He's an incredible dad.
He can do that. No, he's an awesome dad. He he's a hard worker.
Mm-hmm.
And like you, I think sometimes like me when I was younger, work too hard, and you need to schedule downtime. But I'm proud that he's a hard worker, he's a provider. But I think one of the things I've been more proud of is that, and for you, is that you're nice.
Nick,
you're
is
nice.
So nice.
You're nice people, and you're willing to help. Not out of a sense of obligation, but because of it. Just I think it's because, like me, it feels good, and it's just something that you do without even having to justify it or think about it. It's just a natural thing that you guys have, that you're nice, and kind. Let me say that one is kind, because kind has that's that language word, because it has the same root as kin, which means family. That you don't do that thing where life's an onion. I have my immediate family, and I do them. There's other people. Is that you treat everybody respect and love and empathy. And I would say that's something I'm personally working on, but I see Nick play it out really well. Yeah, he does. Very much. Yeah.
And then to include Paul in the same conversation, kind of adopted Paul, our cousin, in a sense, is like this brother, this son. You guys are incredible grandparents to his kiddos. But when you've seen Paul, kind of grow, so funny, weird. It kind of made me emotional.
Cool.
Or weird. Yeah. Just thinking about his growth the last, since a kid. What makes you proud of him?
Well, gosh, I'm very proud of him because, he had a rough go.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he talked to me about when he had his first child was that he would get these PTSD feelings because of the abuse he had as being a young child.
Mm-hmm.
That he would be angry and he'd see his son and he would have these feelings that were like, he was like, there's a wrong feelings,
Yeah.
and that, but he's really grown into it in a way that, I talked about the unconditional love about being a dad. The most important thing is he's there.
Mm-hmm.
He's there as a dad. He was always kind of, like all of us. I think he had more of it than most of us, reckless in a lot of ways. And he's also, in just these last few years, Kim and I were just talking about recently, he's kinder than he was. Part of being kind is, I think, you don't put other people's needs before your own when necessary. And I think he's kind of grown into that. And I think part of why that's happened to him is that he's been involved in doing therapy for people with PTSD.
Yeah.
He's been involved in that. And I think that's something that's helped him, kind of get more comfortable with his own demons, if you will.
Yeah. His own story, right? Because sometimes when you're living your story, it's like, I'm the only one. And once you start to have this understanding of so many people have a story, like everybody has a story.
Yeah.
It gives you more compassion and the opportunity for empathy.
Yeah. And again, it's like, it doesn't have to define you. It's still your story. And I think that's something that he's kind of, growing in.
Yeah.
Is that, these things happen to me and that's part of who and what I am. And I'm glad, they may be who and what I am. So there's a positive way to spin it if you want to. And to be able to do something with it rather than just have it sort of destroy you.
Yeah.
Consume you.
Yeah. It's good. Okay. I'm going to ask kind of my last question. And then I have a couple more things I want to say before we end. So,
sure.
Rebel and create has been this mantra for me. I find myself rebellious, right? I mean, I could think of times as a kid being rebellious in the sense of like, wanting to toilet paper someone's house or, do something silly, rebellious. But then I think about life and like I've wanted to live as a rebel, but not to be destructive, but to create, kind of go against the status quo. And I see you very much as a rebel. And when you think about being a rebel and creating something beautiful, if you're kind of reflecting on your life, what would you say? I was always kind of rebelling against X because I wanted to create Y. What would you say?
Okay. Well, in the town I grew up in was a factory town, shores of Lake Michigan, and the normal pattern was to get your diploma, get a job at one of the factories, buy a house, buy a car, get a boat, start buying a property up in northern Wisconsin, build a cabin, and start having kids at 20. And that was your life. And the social hierarchy of the town was certain factories had more social status than other factories. Working at steel mill was kind of low end. So it was hard, dirty work, dangerous work. People got hurt there all the time. The top end was a place like Johnson Waxer. It was cleaner work, paid better benefits.
And that's where your dad worked.
Yeah, all that sort of thing. Yeah. And so to rebel, it was just like, that was the expectation for everybody. And even my family, the expectation was for us to go to college too, if we wanted to. And, I didn't want to do the factory thing. I did it just to make sure I could do it. Because I want to see what was this. I don't want to reject it until I've looked at it. To support myself in a factory. I took a little pride in that. And I realized, but I don't want to spend my life doing 8-hour shifts making parts for this.
Yeah.
I was good at it, but so what? And the same with the college thing, though, is that all the people on that kind of track got the diplomas, picked a college, went to college. And I was like, I didn't want to do that either. My joke at the time was get an education before I go to college. And so statistically, that's not a good choice because many people who do that end up not going because, they start having families or whatever. They get a job. They can't walk away from the money. And so I took that time off and, I got so much better education because, my goal was my promise was I get my diploma, my master's before I was 30, and I just made it a few months before my 30. And I was able to not be intimidated by professors and office hours and all that sort of thing, and not be distracted by being, 20 years old and wanting to get hammered every night and all that kind of stuff. And so, that rebellion to the normal path was good for me. And then I remember coming home to Wisconsin after I'd moved to wherever I was living at the time, New York, Chicago, where I was living. I come home and everything I owned fit in my car. And my friends would tease me because they had houses, they had property, they were established. And I always use that Henry David Thoreau line about, you don't own your house owns you. And then I said, I have everything I own fits in my car, but I've got all these experiences you'll never have. And a lot of those people that do that, they get in their early 30s and they start thinking they missed out on something. That's why a lot of people get divorced and there's all kinds of other things that happen. I missed out on going to bars and all that kind of wildlife. And it's like, you didn't miss a thing. But if you did at the right age. So I figured I was going with this now. What's
No, you were just talking about what you rebelled against and then what you wanted to create. It sounds like you really wanted to create a life of experiences.
Well, no, and I was my goal was to never live any place for more than 2 years, and I did that until you were born, basically. And so I didn't want to accumulate stuff. And it was that when I realized that now that I have responsibilities beyond myself, I need to reevaluate how I'm living my life. And that's when I realized, I need stability because I owe you stability, and I also need insurance.
Yeah.
And so, that was what I built, that and building the career, building the teaching thing, and I liked that because I was able to not just teach my students, but also teach teachers. And I got involved with the Western Association of Schools and Colleges and accrediting schools and just helping all those people in that business. And so I felt good about kind of building all of that, if that's something to say. Just that and building relationships. Because I said earlier, too, that I tend to just let people go. And one of the things on my 12-year plan is to build and maintain those relationships that I have with people and, strengthen them. And so that's the
We're doing that right now. We're doing that right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So good. We could talk forever, but I'm gonna couple things.
Well, your job's to focus this thing.
Yes, exactly. Guide it somewhere. Otherwise it would go. Yeah. Who knows where you would take it? Okay. I wanted to bring up 3 things from me reading your book. So from me reading your book, and then I'm going to end it with something else. So 3 things that really stood out to me. was it was just really cool to be able to read your journal entries about you deciding to move from Southern California to Northern California because you really wanted a different life for Nick and I to grow up in. And so it was really fun to read. Like, I got my plane ticket. Kim and I are flying to San Francisco. We're driving out. We submitted resumes to everything north of San Francisco and Sacramento.
Yeah, just drew that line.
Yeah, you drew that line. So it was really cool to be a 40-year-old dad, reading about his 40-year-old dad's approach. I mean, because we just moved to Hawaii 3.5 years ago. Like, we made this big leap for our family, right? For our son. And you did something similar, right? And so you were
going to play outside till it got dark, and you couldn't do that in LA.
No, not to what we could do in Hidden Valley, where you landed and had us grow up. So that was really beautiful to read. Something that I really realized. Okay, so in my perspective, right? It's so funny because you think your parents have life figured out in a sense.
Still working.
My kids probably don't, but in looking at parents, you think like, oh, my parents are parents, right? Like, you look at a teacher or a principal, you're like, they're a principal, they're a teacher, they know what they're doing. And I think something that's always been interesting for me is, you and mom are so different. You and mom are so different in a lot of ways.
Yeah. View the different role.
Yeah, you view the world differently, you view things differently, but you found a lot of common ground. But in reading and you've been married for 42 years, which I tell you is one of the greatest gifts you could have given.
42 fun-loving years. Okay, yeah.
Okay, 42 fun-loving years. But in reading your journals and in reading your book, it was so apparent how much you love mom, which is not something you always you see, but you really love mom a lot with all of you.
Yeah.
And to be able to read journal and to read struggles and to hear and see that connection that you guys have, regardless of, maybe obviously we all have differences, but that was a really beautiful thing for me to be able to see. And then out of all the stories I read in there, I just pulled this story out, which I thought was cool. And it has helped me to journal more about connections with my kids. So you had journaled, you walked me to school when I was 7 years old. And you walked me, whatever. It's like, it was interesting because you were talking about stuff that you had going on, but you needed to pause, go walk me to school. And you walk me to the crosswalk, and this lady grabs my hand and takes me across the street. And then when I'm across the street, because I don't remember, right? When I'm across the street, I looked around to see if anybody was seeing, so I'm 7 years old. And then I blew you a kiss, as a thank you, but I didn't want anyone to see this. So to be able to have a moment like that, you are a young dad, career, paying bills, married, all of that. And then to be able to read that kind of story, it was just meaningful to me.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but that's some unconditional love thing, is that there's this thing that I can't really define. It's not really logical. It's not measurable, but it's real.
That connection with this other human.
Yeah.
So beautiful. I really enjoy it. Okay. So now I wrote down 10 things. If I were to honor you, respect you, to say these are things that my dad gave to me, I 10 things that I had to come up with. So gifts. So gifts you gave me. So number one was moving Nick and I to Northern California. I mean, I think about, I don't remember really you ever chasing us down in Hidden Valley, wondering where we were. I mean, we had bicycles, and it seems like that's lost now. Of here's a couple of bikes, come back when it's dark, essentially.
Well, that's because that's what I had, and I wanted you to have that. We had the street lights come on. Yeah, you're on your own.
Yeah, we had so much freedom. Yeah, but
we also had neighbors that kept an eye on you too.
Yeah, we lived in a good, safe place. But I mean, for career-wise, staying in Southern California may have been a better career move.
Oh, I wasn't planning on staying in Hidden Valley forever. The brain surgery changed that trajectory because there wasn't a university that I could teach in there. I would have had at least moved to, Santa Rosa.
Yeah, which still would have been great. But being kids, living there, that was a gift. Okay,
you're welcome.
Number two, it goes in line with that, but you gave us a lot of space outside. I mean, I was laughing because I was reading the book the other day, and there was you had put a list of rules of the house on your office door. I literally just printed out a list of rules for the house, because the kids are killing me slowly. And then this other one of reading, half an hour to read to get an hour of TV. So those are similar things. So it forced us to go outside. You forced us to go outside. great gift. And I mean, that's why I live where I live here. Like you and I are looking outside right now. It's just like all green and
not
grass.
a brick wall.
No, and the kids last night were, we tried moving here and living in suburbia, and it just it didn't like it. And last night you and I are eating dinner, having a nice glass of wine outside, and the kids are riding dirt bikes in the dark.
Yeah.
Like that's the stuff. So that was gift number 2. Gift number 3 is journaling, which we talked about. But journaling, I mean, it's so funny. I went to try to find Brody a book today. And I mean, I have over 100 journals. It's I don't know how I would do life without journals. So journaling is. Number 4 is love for music, right? I love music. I think music also helped you probably just as much as journaling helped you of finding Richard, like what mattered to you. But I mean, I would always love listening to your records, sharing music, sending music. And it's something that I share with Brooklyn a lot is sharing music. Like we'll just listen to music together.
Yeah, well, there was a soundtrack to our life in a lot of ways. I still can't hear, Talking Heads without thinking about Chris Wells, for instance, and also Counting Crows without thinking about you. Could we go on road trips, and that was our soundtrack.
That was the music.
Yeah.
Yeah. And life is so much better with a soundtrack. And even the other night, it was kind of fun. If you're thinking about like this full circle moment, you and me were in the car. Presley was driving, right? Presley has her permit. So she's driving. Your granddaughter's driving you and me. And I was sharing a song with you. And it was kind of an interesting song. I forget the guy's name at the moment, but it's the I'm a Song. Right. And so it's a song about how songs get you through life.
Yeah. No, it's funny because one on my list of my 12-year plan is to get new music all the time. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I do is when someone's playing music, I want to look up later. I Shazam it.
Shazam is
and Stephen Wilson is the artist.
Oh, there you go. You Shazammed it.
Yeah, nice. I take pictures of the Shazam, and then I come back later and see if I want to get it or not. I mean, I probably download new music. Maybe once or at least twice a month. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's this guy that was on NPR, and they were preaching his album, and I listened to his stuff. And actually, I liked his first album better, so I downloaded it. Mm. And he's a guy from South Africa. He's a cellist, but he also does that kind of Aboriginal throat singing. And he does 2 tones going in. Like it sounds like a didgeridoo almost.
Yeah.
So he's playing cello and doing that, and it's kind of quirky, but some of it is wonderfully awesome. Mm. And, when you buy a record like that, there might be 3 or 4 tracks you can listen to again.
If you were to say one song or one band that has had the most influence on your life, what would that be?
Well, it's impossible to pick one. Mm-hmm. Really, there's too many. I mean, I grew up with the Beatles, so they've got a songbook that's huge. You're probably going to anticipate this one. Now, once in a lifetime, Talking Heads was one that was as important, but also Neil Young. And what I liked about Neil Young was he wrote songs for people that no one else would write songs for. By the river, I shot my baby. It's like it's a compassionate look at a horrible person, and it's wonderful. That as an artist, that's a challenge. Mm. And but I've got a whole list of feel-good songs. It's a beautiful morning. I've got all those kinds of songs are ones that capture how I feel.
Mm. And with music, I've noticed more and more too. Like I've kind of coming back to listen to some music that I really enjoyed. I think sometimes the last decade, I've listened to a lot of music that can get me into work mode or can get me into workout mode. Like those 2 modes, like, oh, I need to work for my family or I want to work out. But there's this whole other, like, just more freeing kind of music that puts me in a mood of like, I like this version of Ned of just enjoying life, enjoying the day without a worry about what time it is. Yeah. So I've kind of been introducing more of that recently. I think that it's because we've kind of moved into this space of like, okay, we're here.
Well, you've been pushing a mountain for the last few months, and now you don't have to push so hard.
Yeah. Okay, number 5, Schaut's Law. Okay, but Schaut's Law, there's kind of 2 Schaut's Law. 3. Oh, there's 3. Okay, so here's the 2 I got. And then you tell me what the third one is, and I'm sure I'll be like, that's what it is. Okay, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right, which you've said in this conversation.
Yeah.
What can go right will. Mm-hmm. And I used that recently when I was buying this house. My agent was saying something about, the Murphy's Law. And I was like, oh, no.
It's the opposite.
Yeah. And it was funny because Sarah was like, stop, you're embarrassing me. I was like, oh, sorry. we don't live by that law. That's straight up what I said. I was like, oh, we don't live by that law. We live by Schaut's law. Whatever will go or it can go right will. So it was just funny because I think we were standing on that porch right behind you.
Yeah.
And I think I was standing in the grass and Sarah and him were standing on the porch. And here we are in the house now. So is there a third one?
Yeah.
What is it?
Don't have too many laws.
Oh, yes. Okay. Bam! Got me. And that's true. I've heard you say that one as well.
Yeah, because you can't just live by rules.
And that goes back to the rebel and create. I
Mhm.
think. Okay, so Schaut's law. Number 6, gift marrying mom and staying married. It is, I've been married 20 years and you've been married twice that. Fun 11 years. Okay, I will add as a reminder to myself of why. It's just, you just don't have a lot of people these days who are really committed to that. And it's truly a gift. It's a gift.
Remember, you used this line that I gave you was, you marry an idea.
Yeah, you don't marry a person, you marry an idea.
Well, because, I'm not the same guy I was when we got married. She's not the same woman she was when we got married. And yet this commitment is a big, what the idea is about is that, hey, we're in this for the long haul. Mm-hmm. And people, it's a cliche, but it gets better. It gets better because you kind of rub off all those rough edges and you're more accepting. And, this adult thing about, you start loving people for their faults. Mm-hmm. And that is a wonderful place to be because, that's how you self-love is. You have to learn to love yourself and just give yourself license to do weird things, but just that you accept your limitations, if you will. Mm-hmm. And that you do that. And with a marriage, that's a real important piece is that, this is what we can do, what we can't do, and what you can do, what you can't. And it's wonderful, that you can love a person.
It's good. There was something that as you were sharing that I wanted to say. It'll come back to me. The other gift, so number 7 is working out, training your body. I mean, it's funny. Like I still have, if I run into a friend from growing up in Hidden Valley, there's this like, your dad was the guy in the orange beanie, out doing some sort of workout outside, no matter how cold or warm or whatever. And that's something that I've carried through and something that I'm passing to my kids. This is what I was going to tell you. The quote about you don't marry a person, you marry an idea. You'll like this. So Brody and I were flying home on Monday from a father-son trip, and some dude proposed to a woman on the airplane. So just this on Monday, they're flying to Hawaii. So he proposes. And then Southwest gave, anybody want a 3x5 card? They had these like postcards, essentially. You could write a note to the couple. So I grabbed one and I wrote a book recommendation. And then I wrote, I've been married 20 years and my dad told me, and I put your quote in there. So I passed your quote to this couple that's randomly on some trip in Hawaii right now.
They pass it on to their kids.
And hopefully they will. Yeah. Okay. So number 7 was working out. Everyone knows I love working out. Everyone knows you love working out. So we don't even need to talk about it. Number 8 is being playful. I mean, if I just think of playing, some of my best memories doing with you and with the kids, making boats out of whatever we could find and shoving them down a gutter when it's raining, going and finding worms, going to the lake and when it's raining, especially when it's raining, making little dams and rivers and things, but just getting on the floor and playing was a gift, Nick and I. And I know that we'll pass it down. It's like just that, like, I just think of like that lion rolling around chewing on his cub. That's like a gift you gave us, is to be silly and play.
That's why I like Wordsworth. He's got a line where he says the best part of a man's life are those little unremembered acts of kindness and love. And I like that unremembered part of it because it's just, you just let everything go and just get on the floor. Mm-hmm. And anything could be a game.
Yeah. I mean, even with that, I mean, you and mom were so good at telling stories, and my kids don't want them so much anymore, but just telling the story out under the stars, like to me, that's also playful, which leads me to number 9, which is the night sky. Man. So I remember you waking us up to go see a meteor shower, right? We slept outside all the time growing up. And then when Sarah and I lived in California, we would sleep outside all the time. I mean, you and mom are here in Hawaii, and you're sleeping outside. Yeah. So the night sky, sleeping outside, and I had just an epic moment with Brody and Violet about 2-3 months ago. There was this over the ocean. There was this wild lightning storm. I mean, I woke them up at maybe 4 a.m. and we sat out there until the sun came up. It was so like, they were kind of laughing at me because I'm like, oh, did you see that? Oh, but I got that from you. the care for that, the eye for that.
Yeah, no, gosh, as a kid, my dad used to have us go out and look for satellites because it would go north-south. So that they, because when you see something moving that's too high for a plane, but it's not a shooting star, it's a satellite moving. And we used to watch shooting stars. And one of my favorites was when you get one that's hitting the earth real flat and it skips. And so it'd be a streak of light and then another streak of light and another in the line. And it's very rare to see. And, but yeah, I guess I still remember the first constellation I recognized was the big, real proud of myself. Like, there it is. And it's there. It's constant. Always points to the North Star.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. Number 10, the gift, the thank you, the honor, the respect is just a love of learning. Like, I mean, I have so many books, and it's funny because when I think about high school, I don't really remember you like making me read or anything like that, but I just think it was just something natural that I clung on to that maybe sometime in my mid-20s, I just love to read books. I mean, I have hundreds and hundreds of books, and I was digging through one to find for Brody this morning. And I think it comes to like convictions and wanting to learn, but also being open to another person's ideas. So that would be number 10 is thank you for giving me the desire to learn.
Oh gosh, I'm again proud of you for all of these things. And yeah, I mean that, the desire to learn it's like for me, and I think for you, it's like oxygen, it's nourishing. And again, it broadens yourself because you get to look at the world through someone else's eyes. And that's what books do, in a way that you don't get, music does it in a different way. You get that same thing, you get to see the world, a bigger world.
And it's fun to see it through others' eyes. So something you've done recently is you've given me 2 books, but what you did is you wrote inside the cover a couple things that stood out to you, like, hey, page 92, see this. And so I really appreciate that. And I'm kind of underlining some of my own books in hopes that my kids come across them one day and see them and saw the things that matter to me. So I love you. You are a really good dad. You've been a great dad. You've been a good husband to Mom, been a great dad to Nick, to me, taking in Paul and being a good dad to him, giving us a lot of space to be ourselves. If and when you agree with all of it or not, accepting, loving us unconditionally comes down to that. And great grandpa to my kids, especially when they were little, just playing with them and giving them that same love for outdoors and stars and baking and fun things. But I don't think, I think the reason why I started this podcast in my pursuit of fatherhood is fatherhood matters, and not every dad is told, motherhood is obviously like this, like moms are incredible, but I don't think we honor fathers the same way. And it's unfortunate because a father is so important. And you have been and continue to be really important in my life. Your view of me, your belief in me, when you say you're proud of me, those words carry more weight than any other man on the planet could give. So I thank you for the moments that you said those things, believe those things. And I know even if you didn't say them, that you know them, like you believe them. So I just want you to know how important you are to me.
Oh, thanks, Ned. Thanks. It's been wonderful knowing you.
And we have more time.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Dad. Love you too.